Shalom, giving all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Makaha, double honors to the old apostles, a great millstone, do rule well. Peace, love, and blessings to the brothers on the highways and byways, giving all diligence to make a call and election sure. And blessings to the very few sisters listening, learning, and believing. I'm not fellow Labor Kanakla, coming to you once again with another lesson. Lord's will through the Spirit and power, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai. There's lessons edifying and also exhorting. All right, in this age, just be prophecy watch, signs of the times, wars and rumors of wars, man. All right, what's the war we've been waiting on? The war between basically America and Iran. And, what's going to happen is it's going to be the cause of World War III, okay? Where Iran is allied with two of the world's superpowers, Russia and China, okay? And eventually America and Russia are going to lock horns. Okay, it'll be no more proxies. It'll be a head-on war between the two biggest nuclear-powered nations on the planet, henceforth bringing in the destruction of Babylon the Great, aka America, to be utterly destroyed by the way of fire. Okay? As we know, the small hats, according to prophecies, all right, the tiny tops, that little state over there in the Middle East, all right, they're going to draw them out into this war, okay, like they always do. But nonetheless, get right into it. Article here from RT, why Washington may test Iran and live to regret it. Only part about it is they won't live. They're going to regret it, but they won't live because according to Bible prophecy, the Heavenly Father, all right, has America, aka Babylon, sanctioned for destruction by the way of fire. All right, specifically the nuclear missiles. Okay, so they're going to regret it, but they won't live to. All right, because America's going to be a complete desert. All right, thus saith the Lord. His deployment of substantial U.S. military forces to the Persian Gulf has once again revived speculation about the possibility of American military action against Iran. So this would fall under the guidelines of this verse right here. This is Matthew 24:6. I'm get right to the point. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. All right. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Why? Because one major prophecy has to come to pass before this war fully kicks off. All right. Because ultimately it's going to lead to the nukes being shot. So as it says, a revised speculation about the possibility of American military action against Iran. So that's, again, wars and rumors of wars. Since international politics rarely follows a linear script, but the current situation can be assessed through a set of plausible scenarios. One of them, and not the least serious, is the use of force. There are arguments that support the military option. The U.S. has long-standing and specific reasons to consider action against Iran at this particular moment. For more than 4 decades, Tehran has been one of Washington's most consistent adversaries. Its hostility towards Israel, a key U.S. ally in the region, is even more irreconcilable. Western governments believe Iran has for years pursued the development of nuclear weapons. And that's always a strategy. All right, when it comes to the Middle East, you think about Afghanistan, Iraq, that was always in the playbook. Basically stopping these nations from developing weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so it's the same thing. It says in North Korea's successful emergence as a de facto nuclear power serves as an obvious precedent. By contrast, recent history offers many examples of states that lacked nuclear weapons and were attacked or dismantled by force. Exactly. And all these people lack nuclear weapons. America is not going to mess with a country that has nuclear weapons. These missile capabilities. Okay? Because, they want an enemy that basically, they can easily dismantle, as it says. It says Iran itself has subjected to military strikes in 2025. Meanwhile, Tehran has achieved notable progress in its missile program, with U.S. officials openly described as a direct threat. Iranian counterstrikes against Israel during last year's conflict underscored that capability. Domestic unrest inside Iran may further encourage Washington to consider the military option. Okay, and that's another tactic. The civil unrest, right, where you got economic hitmen, is a terminology called the jackals, where you have agent provocateurs, all right, provoking the protesters to basically become violent, to start destroying their cities and infrastructure. Okay? It says protests are often interpreted in Western capitals as a sign of regime weakness or as a precursor to revolutionary change. It's just what they want, they want the people to overthrow the regime. Okay? It says from this perspective, military pressure could serve as a catalyst, reinforcing protest movements, undermining state institutions, and potentially triggering either systemic collapse or a Syria-style civil war. The U.S. has past experience with military operations that reshape political systems in targeted states. Afghanistan stands as an exception, but even there, the U.S.-backed government survived for nearly 2 decades. Okay? So from this angle, the current situation may appear to American planners as an opportunity to address multiple security concerns simultaneously through limited force. The most likely form such action would take is not a ground invasion, but a combination of airstrikes, special forces operations, and efforts to arm and organize opposition groups. You're never really going to gain any ground without putting boots there, all right? Yeah, you can do all the airstrikes you want, but in order to take position, boots got to be placed on the ground, all right? That's just, as they say, the army is the backbone of the military. All right, in order to take land, take position, you got to put boots on the ground. All right, 'cause yeah, you could do the airstrikes, but if you're not taking covering ground, and airstrikes is nothing. People just go back and occupy, all right, those sections. A full-scale land operation would be costly, politically risky, and difficult to justify. But they're going to find a way to justify it. We know that. So at the same time, the risks of such a scenario are considerable, like the first lies in the nature of Iran's military system. While Iran is vulnerable to concentrated airstrikes, air power alone is unlikely to destabilize either the regular armed forces or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Both counterstrikes and sustain prolonged resistance on the ground. Second, it remains unclear whether Iran's political elite is internally divided. Without a genuine split at the top, external intervention is unlikely to produce rapid political transformation. Third, public readiness for armed confrontation should not be confused with protest activity. Mass demonstrations do not automatically translate into willingness of civil war. Foreign intervention could at least temporarily consolidate domestic support for the authorities and legitimize emergency measures. Fourth, there are serious economic risks. Any escalation would threaten energy supplies and maritime shipping in the Persian Gulf. All right, so we already know just basic, geography. Here's the Persian Gulf. Iran controls basically the northern part of that, which is this area right here. So any point in time, all right, Iran could block that off, all right, and cause a global energy crisis throughout the world. All right, and that would definitely hurt China, definitely. All right. So, with global repercussions. Fifth, there is the issue of reputational damage. A failed operation would weaken the credibility of the U.S. administration and reinforce doubts about Washington's ability to manage large-scale crisis. An alternative scenario is the continuation of economic pressure, sanctions, blockades, diplomatic isolation, aimed at gradually eroding the Iranian political system from within. And that's why a lot of these countries are doing something called de-dollarization, all right, to where America is able to cripple their economy by putting sanctions on them because they control the global currency, which is the U.S. dollar. All right, says the logic is familiar. Accumulated economic stress leads to protests. Protests undermine legitimacy, and the system collapses under its own weight. Problem is that this strategy has rarely worked in practice. There is a real possibility that Iran will adapt both politically and economically, as it has done repeatedly. Meanwhile, progress in Iran's nuclear missile programs would continue, while the U.S. and Israel possess the means to deter Iran militarily. Tehran's transition to nuclear weapon status would fundamentally alter the strategic balance. Revolutionary upheaval in a nuclear-armed state would pose extreme risk, raising unavoidable questions about control over weapons and escalation pathways. From Washington's point of view, the most rational approach may therefore be a limited hit-and-see strategy. A short-focused air campaign would test the resilience of Iran's political system, the response of society, and the cohesion of its armed forces. If Iran withstands the strike and the system remains intact, the U.S. could step back, return to sanctions, and reassesses. This logic is reinforced by the fact that Iran lacks the ability to inflict decisive damage on the U.S. itself, while even limited strikes could degrade its military infrastructure and industrial base. Under such a model, Washington could simply wait for another favorable moment to apply force again. From this perspective, the prospect of renewed U.S. air operations against Iran appears far from hypothetical. Iran, for its part, also faces difficult choices. One option is resistance. That means absorbing a strike, responding with limited countermeasures, and attempting to impose sufficient cost on the U.S. and its allies to deter repetition. And that was one of the problems, basically the cheap yet abundant drones that Iran has that's able to basically knock out equipment that costs millions and millions and millions of dollars, and basically it'll exhaust the U.S. monetarily, and they fear China more on that scale than anybody because China actually has the manufacturing power to continue to produce, all right, that cheap weaponry. That's why, when all hell really breaks loose and World War III pops out, it's going to be like hey, all the manufacturing, the factories and here on and so forth in America, all that's going to be for military use, man. All right? Because you're going to be at war. And that's basically, all right, what will happen. Because this drone technology, all right, and, you know, these advancement of these projectiles, missiles, and so on and so forth, it has changed warfare, man. So yeah, you know, at one point in time, having all those aircraft carriers, all right, America's superior navy, at one point in, you know, in life, that meant something. But when you have a drone, all right, or a missile that costs not even a fraction of the price, all right, and that can be made in abundance. Basically, what it's gonna do is it's gonna exhaust, all right, it's gonna exhaust that high sophisticated equipment with some cheap, you know, with some cheap counter weapons, man. All right, and you got China supplying Iran, and also Russia. It says Iran, for its part, also faces difficult choices. One option is resistance. That means absorbing a strike, responding with limited countermeasures, and attempting to impose sufficient costs, and that's the point, on the U.S. and its allies to deter repetition. Opportunities for this are constrained, but Tehran demonstrated last year that it's capable of calibrating retaliation. The second option is negotiation, yet this path may be even more dangerous. Talks conducted under direct military pressure would likely involve maximalist demands from Washington, not only on Iran's nuclear and missile programs, but also on internal political arrangements. Negotiating from such a position risks concessions without any guarantee that military action will be ruled out in the future. Taken together, the likelihood of U.S. military action against Iran appears quite real. Any such move would carry serious consequences, not only for Tehran, but for the wider region and third countries far beyond it. So it's cause a regional conflict, all right? And, you know, we hear they're going to do it, all right? Because it's prophecy. So let's get into the precepts. Joel 2 verse 15 says, blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly. And that trumpet that's being blown, all right, Zion, a people before a place, all right, it's the prophets out there telling you these things. Starting from our apostles on down, we've been telling you about World War III, all right? The apostles have been saying for years that once they go into Iran, it's over. That's where they're going to end. Okay? And this is a solemn assembly. We're coming together, all right, by the word of the Lord, preparing ourselves for what's about to come, man. It says, gather the people and sanctify the congregation. We sanctify them by the way of the truth. As assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck the breasts, the elect, all right? Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests, the ministers of the Lord, weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare thy people, O Lord, and give not thy heritage to reproach. All right, and the high priest Yahushai, all right, he's up there making that supplication for us, man. Okay, and we doing it here, all right, in his stead here on the planet Earth. Asking the Lord to have mercy on us, have mercy on the elect, those that believe wholeheartedly and sincerity. All right, and give not thy heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. All right, because this is a time for the heathen to go down, starting with Esau, Edom. It's at the end of his world. It says, wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? All right. But hey, listen, it says, then will the Lord be jealous of his land and pity his people. Okay? Because you're boasting, where is their God? The Lord will be jealous of his land, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and pity his people, and that's ultimately what's going to happen. The Lord is going to have pity upon us. All right, he's going to fight for us. It says, yea, the Lord will answer and say unto his people, behold, I will send you corn and wine and oil. And that's starting by the way of this word, man. The understanding of this word. This is our sanctuary. This is our tabernacle. The word of the Most High, man. Which is Yahushai being that temple. It says, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. And we are. It says, and I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen, but I will remove far from among you the northern army, which is talking about America, and will drive them into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. All right, so draw them to the land barren and desolate. This region over here, right? Barren and desolate. Okay? With his face toward the East Sea, which is the Persian Gulf. And his hinder part towards the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea. All right, so in this area right here, it's going to go down, man. Barren and desolate. Lord's going to draw. All right, and he's doing it now by the way of the area. You got aircraft carriers sitting off not too far. All right. But soon there's going to be a draft and them troops going to come over here. All right. You're going to have ICE, okay, like they was doing in Ukraine. Dudes in vans, masked up, grabbing men off the streets, all right, and sending them to war. That's going to happen here, man. All right. It's been prophesied, not me saying it. That's what the scriptures say. Your husband shall be destroyed in war. The women shall mourn, basically having no men, because they shall be destroyed in a war. It's written in the scriptures. It says, and his stink shall come up, because once you go over there, you're going to be a part of the soil, man. All right, part of the desert, the dust. It says, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. So the Lord is about to do great things. Fear not, O land, and be glad and rejoice, for the Lord will do great things. And this is a great thing the Lord is getting ready to do. World War III, where he about to bring these nations, this northern army, right? The most powerful army in the world, right? And destroy them. This is what kept them in their position. This is what the dollar is backed by. All right? You don't want to see those ships, those aircraft carriers pulling up to on your beach. All right? That's the last thing you want to see. And that's what allowed them to keep their position on the planet Earth. But the Lord is about to destroy the northern army, man. The most feared and powerful army on the planet to ever exist. The U.S. military. But the Lord is about to do great things. So with that, Lord willing, is that if I'm leave it there, giving all praises to Yahweh Vashem Yahushai. Till next time, I say Shalom.